Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
The only voluntary defence that's out there, really, for me, is Chantel Cameron, which I think is an incredible fight. And although Sandy didn't mention her name, she did say to me last night, whilst she was eating ice cream, "Oh, I would love that fight." But, you know, Chantel's looking for massive fights as well. So those kind of fights. And the other fight, which obviously is difficult because it's the same team, is Michaela Meyer, which is a tremendous fight. But, you know, I think really the champions are where it's at. I think realistically, probably Natasha Jonas. I think Natasha she might fancy that fight, you know. And we have no problem, if it's the right opportunity for Sandy, doing it, you know, on Sky. If we have to go over there and challenge, or we'll make a big offer to do it on DAZN, you know, we've got to give her the opportunity to roam free for the belts. But obviously we want to do it. She's a star with Matchroom. We've had her for the debut and with DAZN, and that's where we'd like her fights to be. But if, you know, it was a case of, oh, we're not fighting over there, well, we'll come over there and fight. And that's a big fight.
The Jonas fight won't happen. We talked about that. The Jonas fight won't happen because Natasha's not going to go back over to Matchroom and DAZN.
And Boxer's not going to pay to bring Sandy over.
Potentiality of Sandy Ryan beating Natasha Jonas and taking her belt is too high for them to want to pay for that fight on their side of things. Consider they're not even paying for Lawrence Okolie's next fight. They're shipping him out to Poland.
They're not paying for that. They wouldn't pay for this.
Sandy's too big, too strong. Even though Natasha Jonas has power of her own, she'd lose that fight for the same reason Terry lost this past weekend, because she's not a true welterweight. She doesn't have a true welterweight's durability.
It's not likely to happen anyway. Let's not waste more time on that.
What about Michaela Meyer?
Michaela's tough.
She's been in there with some punchers. Maiva Hamadouche, a volume puncher. Alicia Baumgartner, a very strong fighter, very strong puncher. But all of that was at 130 pounds. This fight would be at 147. I think she's more durable than Terry Harper, more durable than Natasha Jonas, but still not a true welter.
It's not likely to happen either.
Why not?
I thought I saw Kay Karoma in Sandy's corner this weekend. That's the same Kay Karoma you can find in Michaela Meyer's corner.
On that premise, I don't know if that fight happens. I don't. Mixed feelings about what would happen if it did, and they made it.
It's a good fight.
Somewhat tough to call. An in-house fight with Chantel Cameron, former undisputed champion at 140 pounds. Chantel Cameron was coming off that loss to Katie Taylor. There was supposed to be a trilogy. I guess the wheels have slowed in reference to that, if Eddie Hearn is now volunteering her for a Sandy Ryan fight.
Throwing her name in the hat.
Long time ago, Chantel Cameron used to campaign as low as 135 pounds, and it wasn't long before she moved up in weight, moved up to 140. I think she's a bit bigger, a bit beefier than Natasha Jonas, than Terry Harper, not as wiry as Michaela Meyer. I think she'd fit right in at 147 pounds. If that Katie Taylor trilogy is on hold, I don't see why they shouldn't make a fight between Chantel and Sandy. Chantel and Sandy, who minced words a ways back.
Back when Sandy was still with Clifton Mitchell.
Things got pretty nasty between the two in March of 2022. Spirited back and forth between them that played out on social media. There's an opportunity here and now to make the fight. Chantel's coming off that loss to Katie Taylor. There may not be a third fight, so what about a fight with Sandy?
I could go for that.
I think Chantel Cameron is durable and strong. She's got a mean streak like Sandy Ryan, but as a fighter, she's a lot more experienced. Been a champion longer.
She's not a champion anymore.
She was, and she wasn't just a champion or a unified champion. She was an undisputed champion. She only recently lost all those belts. She only recently suffered her first loss.
Her and Sandy makes for fireworks. World War III kind of fight.
The chance for Chantel Cameron to not only get back in the winner's bracket, but effectively become a two-division champion. If she were to beat Sandy at 147, that's what would happen.
Can she?
I don't think Sandy would overpower Chantel Cameron as easily as she did Terry Harper, or as easily as she would Natasha Jonas. No, Chantel Cameron's a sturdier fighter, sturdier than them.
Oh, they've both campaigned at higher weights than Chantel.
Yeah, they might have campaigned at 154 briefly, but they were never true 154s. They were never true junior middles. They were never true welters.
Don't let that fool you.
I think Chantel Cameron is more durable than the both of those fighters. I think she, like Sandy Ryan, she's a mid-range to inside fighter, a mean-spirited one, a spiteful one. They share a common opponent with Jessica McCaskill. Chantel Cameron beat her decisively, beat her comprehensively, whereas Sandy suffered a controversial draw that should have been a win.
They both performed well against her.
How would they perform against each other? That's the question. That's a very tough fight to edge. very tough fight to call.
Sandy's a little bigger.
Chantel's a lot more experienced. Now maybe, just maybe, Sandy packs a bigger punch. Maybe. But Chantel would be the strongest puncher I think she's shared the ring with to date.
So far.
The most educated puncher she's shared the ring with to date.
So far.
Like Eddie Hearn's mind, he has a mind to put Terry Harper in the ring with Rhiannon Dixon down the line, and he seems to have a mind to put Chantel Cameron in the ring with Sandy Ryan down the line.
Spicy fights.
And there's backstory there. There is history between Chantel and Sandy. So I wouldn't mind seeing it. If we're not getting a Katie Taylor trilogy, I'll take this. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, word round the campfire, per Boxing Insider Rick Glacier, seems to be that Errol Spence has reputedly stiffed Derek James out of his trainer's fee from the Terrence Crawford fight. It could be Errol didn't like Derek James's fight plan, but no fight plan that Spence could execute was going to beat Terrence Crawford.
This has been the word round the campfire for at least 2 days now.
On the premise that it's true, you have to address this in 2 parts. It's not uncommon for a fighter to decide they want to go their separate ways with their longtime trainer. We saw Timothy Bradley do that years ago with Joel Diaz. He parted ways with Joel unamicably and then enlisted the aid of Teddy Atlas. More recently, Sandy Ryan parted ways with her longtime trainer Clifton Mitchell, and she's now training in America.
After the Usyk fight, after losing it, the first one, Anthony Joshua parted ways with his longtime trainer Rob McCracken.
He enlisted the aid of Angel Fernandez and Robert Garcia. Then he parted ways with them, enlisted the aid of Derek James. Then he parted ways with him, like they're saying Errol did.
Now he's with Ben Davison.
Ryan Garcia. He used to be trained by Eddie Reynoso, then Joe Goosen, now Derek James. Chantel Cameron used to be trained by Shane McGuigan. Then she parted ways with him, enlisted the aid of Nigel Travis and Jamie Moore. Now she's parted ways with them. My point.
Happens all the time.
Fighters part ways with their trainers, sometimes their longtime trainers, all the time. Jaime Munguia, up until recently, was being trained by Eric Morales, and he recently parted ways with him. Now he's trained by Freddie Roach. It's a common practice. It's not the end of the world that Errol Spence Jr. might feel at this point in his career. He needs a change, a fresh start, someone new. There's nothing wrong with that. We see it all the time. It's the circumstances.
Did he stiff him on the money?
Because that's what the rumor mill is spinning. That's a part of it, a part of the story, that not only is he not with Derek anymore, he stiffed him on the money. If he did, well, that's pretty fucking despicable. And it's just like Rick Glacier says. There's no version of Errol, and there's no game plan that Derek or anybody else could have come up with that would have beat Terrence Crawford that night.
Sorry.
This in and of itself, the fighter parting ways with the trainer due to the money. We've seen that before. Upon Gennady Golovkin signing that lucrative deal to DAZN, he parted ways with his longtime trainer, Abel Sanchez. And what was it over? It was over the money.
He didn't want to pay him more money.
So like I said, we see this all the time. It's a common practice. What is Errol Spence Jr. going to do moving forward if he's not retiring? Some feel that he should. What does he have?
What's he got left to give to the sport of boxing after a systematic beating like that one? A fighter's not the same.
After Joe Calzaghe got his hands on Jeff Lacey, Jeff left hook Lacey. Jeff was never the same after that systematic beating. I'd wager that Errol will never be the same after this one. Up until that point. Up until that night.
His fans.
You know, because he beat Danny Garcia in late 2020, and he managed to stop Yordenis Ugas in 2022, I believe it was.
They thought he was fine. They thought he was all right. They were still backing him to beat Terrence Crawford. It's only after the fact they quite conveniently decided that now he's damaged goods. You weren't saying that when he fought Danny.
No.
You weren't saying that when he fought Ugas.
No.
Now that's what you're saying. What I'm saying, if he wasn't damaged goods before, he certainly is now.
A trainer switch might help. A fresh start. New set of eyes, a new set of strategies to streamline himself ahead of what could be a junior middleweight campaign.
Right.
Or a middleweight campaign. It might help.
Right.
But the beating that he took at the hands of Terrence Crawford, that looked like one of those career-altering beatings, career-defining.
Taking that much punishment, brains getting jostled around inside the skull.
It affects your punch resistance to where whatever solid shot gets in now, it's going to rattle you. It's going to buzz you. You can't take punches the same way you did before. That's what determines whether or not a fighter is shot. He would have been better off going out there and getting knocked out in the first round, the very first round, cold slept, than getting beat on round after round after round for 3 minutes at a time. He would have been better off getting knocked out in the first round than suffering the beating he took over 9. And what I notice about PBC fighters, what I notice about them in particular, is that when their unbeaten fighters take a loss, they're never the same, whereas some other fighters that are with some other outfits, they lose a fight, they come again. They get back in the winner's bracket, maybe they become champions at another weighter. Who knows? I mean, Anthony Joshua, look at the resurgence that he's having, and he's got 3 losses.
But he's back. He's all the way back, hurting people, knocking people out.
Other fighters that are with other outfits, like a Matchroom or a Top Rank or a Golden Boy, if their fighters lose a fight, they can come again, whereas PBC guys, when they lose a fight, they're never who they were before that. Keith Thurman is a prime example. He's never been the same since that Pacquiao fight.
Wilder's never been the same since those Fury fights.
I think the same might apply to Errol Spence after that Crawford fight. Men's junior middleweight news ahead of this weekend's big junior middleweight showdown. Tszyu versus Fundora PBC card is only available in the United States via Amazon. That's saying that they're using other platforms in other territories
to distribute the pay-per-view.
Lance Pugmire stated, "Consider this the equivalent of a new restaurant's soft opening. So while Amazon's Prime Video makes its U.S. debut Saturday with a pay-per-view card headlined by Tim Tszyu's pursuit of a second world title belt against Sebastian Fundora at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, the rest of the world will have to access the bout by their own means." A Prime Video spokesperson confirmed to Boxing Scene Monday that the streaming service's pay-per-views for now are just available in the United States, with the potential to add more territories in the future.
But not yet. So say you're in the UK and you want to see the show, well, you're going to have to pay for it. It's going to cost you $19.99, and you can purchase the pay-per-view via Fight TV, who have distributed some of the PBC's shows in the past. It's less than ideal to build the fight as a pay-per-view in a territory like that.
And at that time of day, the people at Amazon plan on making their boxing programming available in more territories, but not yet. They plan on doing that later. How much later is the question of the hour, and the spokesperson said international viewers should continue to check the PBC website for global listings. A global television executive who handles foreign distribution of fights for PBC did not immediately respond to messages left by Boxing Scene. In Tszyu's native Australia, for example, an existing foreign broadcast arrangement with Fox will allow the bout to be seen there on pay-per-view.
He's a pay-per-view attraction in his own country, but not in this one, and certainly not in the United Kingdom, and especially not at that time of day.
You have to remember, if it's 11 p.m. here in America in, say, New York City, it's 3 in the morning in London. 3 a.m. That's less than ideal, less than an ideal time to charge people for a fight they weren't asking for.
And what is an already busy weekend of fights,
where they're getting fights at no additional charge. The top-ranked show set to go down on Friday is going to be shown on Sky Sports at no additional charge. You can't then turn around on Saturday and try to charge people for another fight they weren't even asking for, with fighters they're not even familiar with.
or familiar enough with, they're going to pay per view.
The same night as another card, the Golden Boy Promotions card, the Zurdo Ramirez versus Arsen Goulamarian fight, happening that same night at no additional charge on DAZN. Once again, it's less than ideal.
The Bill Tszyu versus Fundora is a pay-per-view in that territory.
It's less than ideal. Lance Pugmire says the ultimate beauty of the PBC's alignment with Prime Video is that beyond its powerful reach in the United States, it intends to also connect the fights globally on that same platform. The next scheduled Prime Video pay-per-view is undisputed super middleweight champion Canelo Alvarez defending his 4 belts against his Mexican countryman Jaime Munguia.
So nothing in April.
I told you, there's going to be a complete blackout in April. They're doing their first pay-per-view at the end of this month, in March. Nothing in April, then they'll come back in May.
Wow.
After that, boxing officials have reported a June 15th pay-per-view that's going to be featuring Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin and David Benavidez versus Alexander Gvozdyk.
We've talked about.
The names may be familiar. The name of Canelo Alvarez and Jaime Munguia in May, and the names of these fighters set to headline a June show, but what you'll notice is that these shows are far and few, spread apart.
And they're all pay-per-views.
A pay-per-view in March, a pay-per-view in May, then another one in June. Not that pay-per-views are selling like hotcakes these days, because they're not, but if all you're doing are pay-per-views, that really does put a cap on how many eyes you can get on your fights.
Your cards.
And you don't seem to be doing that many. The Prime Video spokesperson said, the new PBC Championship Series cards of non-pay-per-view bouts with up-and-coming fighters will debut later on in the year on Prime Video in the UK and other territories. The date for the launch, however, has not yet been finalized, and while we're waiting for that, All the other game in town are staging their cards, several of them. You're talking about several Matchroom shows, several Golden Boy shows, several Top Rank shows that are not pay-per-views. What does that mean?
The difference.
Most of what you get from Matchroom, Golden Boy, and Top Rank are non-pay-per-view shows. You get those cards as part of your existing subscriptions, whereas most of what you're getting from the PBC are all behind a paywall. It's all pay-per-view.
Everything they have on schedule.
So if you're one of these guys that swears by the PBC and you love all things PBC, you're going to be coming out of pocket every other month. Irrespective of what the other game in town is doing, to see those PBC shows, it's going to cost you for the foreseeable future, and it's going to keep costing you.
In tandem with how many fighters have already jumped ship. Kenny Sims left the PBC. Michelle Rivera left the PBC. Subriel Matias left the PBC. That by the time they start doing these non-pay-per-view shows, these regular shows, who's going to be in them?
Who's going to be left? Deontay Wilder's last fight was in Saudi, and so was Frankie Sanchez's. Andy Ruiz, he hasn't fought in over a year, and it seems like the PBC no longer has a stake in heavyweight boxing. Not at heavyweight, not at light heavyweight, cruiser, bridger,
super feather or feather, and anywhere below it.
They're operating at a reduced capacity, and some people are balling up their fists and shaking them at the sky whenever I say that, but what do you want me to say? Is there a nicer way to say it?
Do you prefer I pretend that this is a good thing?
To spare your feelings, and why are you so emotionally involved anyway with the state of affairs over there?
Are they paying you?
Now what you're wondering is if someone is paying me to slander them.
What part of that was slander, though? Those are the facts as they are. You just don't like them.
Do you think everything you don't like is slander by default? Do you even know what slander is, what it means? In this era where anything someone finds disagreeable is immediately labeled a narrative.
What do? Repeat words you hear other people say without knowing what they mean?
It seems that way if you're getting upset that I'm reminding you they're operating at a reduced capacity. They're doing less and less shows. They're doing less shows this year than they did last year and the year before that and the year before that.
It is what it is.